Hey, Dr. Shaddox. My name is Tim Lockerbie. I own a fertilization company in northern Illinois. I subscribe to your channel and have to say it's the best information I've had ever on YouTube. My formal turf training was from Purdue University, but it was more like an online course. It's not a 4-year degree. Been doing this for 25 years, and I need your opinion on a product that I built my program on. It's called Screamin' Green by Claris Nutrients or Nutrients Plus. Just want your opinion on that. It's a little more spendy than your typical sulfur-coated ureas, but it has urea, sulfur-coated urea, poultry manure, and then apparently marine biosolids, and some ammonium sulfate. So it's a lot of organic material, which according to Purdue and other research I've read is beneficial. But I would love to get your take on Screamin' Green and find out if I am wasting money on that and could just be sticking with the sulfur-coated urea with no organic compound to that. Again, I really appreciate everything you do out there. It's great to have true knowledge, and so keep doing what you're doing. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
I mean, just the question alone makes me smile, because I know, or I should say I'm convinced, that he's thinking critically now about his program. Not to say he wasn't in the past. Maybe he was doing it in the past too, you know. But now he's like, well, wait a second. I'm assuming, perhaps incorrectly, but I'm assuming because information he's received from Turfgrass epistemology, he's thinking, well, do I really need that? How do I know I need that? How do I know I'm benefiting from paying more for this material? And that makes me so happy. You have no idea. I could, if the channel ended tomorrow, I'd end a happy man, you know. So let's go look at the product he was talking about and see what he has to say. See what the product is. So the product is called Claris Pro Enhanced Efficiency Fertilizer Screamin' Green. It's a 16-2-3. I don't know if this is a common product or not. I don't know. Maybe everybody is familiar with it. I wasn't familiar with it. I've never used it, but doesn't mean it doesn't work. So let's take a look at it. He wanted to know specifically, not does it work? He wanted to know, am I wasting my money on spending more money on this product than I would just buying sulfur-coated urea or ammonium sulfate? Could I just get the same response with that for less money? So let's take a look. So this is the guaranteed analysis of Screamin' Green. We see the total analysis of the total nitrogen is 16%, and it has ammoniacal urea and water insoluble nitrogen. And the water insoluble nitrogen down here says 7.25% solely available urea nitrogen from sulfur-coated urea. So right there we know that a little less than half of this 16 is from sulfur coat. Probably about half. It's probably 8%. And then if the manufacturer or the distributor knows what they're doing, they probably knocked it down a little bit so they don't get dinged with fines. So roughly half of this is sulfur-coated urea. Okay. And it says 2.4% slowly available water and soluble nitrogen from poultry manure and biosolids. So 2.4% of that 16 is, or 2.4 units of this 16 is from organic nitrogen, basically. And then we have ammoniacal nitrogen coming from ammonium sulfate. So we have basically half sulfur coat, a little bit of ammonium sulfate, maybe around a quarter of ammonium sulfate, and maybe around a quarter of biosolids and natural organic nitrogen. Some rough numbers here, okay, guys? And then we have some phosphorus, which is probably coming from, well, let's see, it is coming from the biosolids. That's the only source, poultry manure and biosolids, okay? And then we have some potash coming from sulfate of potash, and some sulfur coming from ammonium sulfate, and iron probably coming from the biosolids or the poultry manure. So in other words, they have a normal sort of synthetic fertilizer with ammonium sulfate and sulfur coat, and they've put in a large component of natural organics and biosolids, and they call it Screamin' Green and whatever. So the question that Tim, I think his name was Tim, said, am I just wasting my money by doing this, or can I just go with sulfur coat? For those of you who are familiar with the past month or so, I've been going over nitrogen sources, and we've gone over the cost and so forth. And we've gone over the Turfgrass response to nitrogen sources. My take on this is you will probably have perfectly good looking turfgrass with a product like this. I mean, you have 16% nitrogen, you have some soluble in there from ammonium sulfate, you have some slow release from some biosolids and from some sulfur coat, and applied at the right rate at the right time, I have a great deal of confidence that the Turfgrass would look great. But that wasn't his question. His question was, is he getting any benefit out of that natural organic and the poultry manure in there? Or, is there a benefit to it? And then if so, is it worth the additional cost? I have not gone into a great deal of detail on the natural organics and the poultry manures and the biosolids and so forth about additional benefits. I will say this. There is some marginal evidence in the literature that the application of natural organics over many, many years could potentially increase the microbial biodiversity in the soil. Could, but hold on. Okay, could. It would take many years. I know I'm thinking of one particular paper. There was a 15-year study where they're applying these natural organics and they're measuring the microbial activity and nematodes and all these other things. And they're measuring the soluble organic carbon in the organic matter. And they did show in that particular study a little bit of an increase using these natural products in the organic matter. I want to say it was, I'm going to get this wrong, but I want to say it was like 4.9% from the natural, that was the total, organic matter. And without using the natural organic, it was like 4.6% or something with the synthetic nitrogen sources they used in that study. In other words, it was statistically an increase. But I would argue, the additional cost for that is substantial to get a little bit of a bump in organic material in the soil over 15 years. Okay. It'd be up to you to determine if you want to spend that much money to get a little bit of a bump in organic matter. Again, we're not getting paid on organic matter. I'm not getting paid to produce organic matter. You're getting paid to produce turf grass and lawns and acceptable soil or acceptable fairways and sport turf and these things. But if you're going to ask me strictly, is there any benefit to applying these natural organics and these poultry manure products? I can't say no. There probably is some small advantage or benefit in terms of microbial activity and populations from long-term applications of these components that have a lot of carbon in them. So I will say that, but it's not very strong evidence, I'll say that, and it's extremely expensive to do it that way. Okay. So the answer is, technically, you could see a benefit from using a poultry manure and biosolid in long term. You could. It'd have to be a long-term application and all these things. You're going to obviously run into major problems if you don't have a phosphorus deficiency and you're applying phosphorus from these products. But I'm putting that aside for now. You could see a benefit, potentially. But his next question was, am I wasting my money, or could I just get the same from a sulfur-coated ammonium sulfate? And that's the paper that I showed a couple weeks ago, is that clearly there is very strong evidence to indicate that you can produce equal or greater turf quality and performance from using a sulfur coat or using ammonium sulfate or using urea rather than using these poultry manures and these biosolids. And you can do it for much less money. My recollection, if someone can go back and look at that episode, my recollection was that the cost of these biosolids was per pound of N and per pound or per day of response was roughly around 5 or 6 times more expensive than urea than urea. So it's a very, very expensive way to do it. If you want to use these natural organics to somehow, produce acceptable turf grass, you will. It just seems to me to be a very expensive way to do it. And any additional benefit would probably be negligible. It would probably take a very long time to see that, and it would be very expensive to do it.